I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your chilling host, and you're about to hear that terrifying tale in today's episode of Midnight Horror Files. Tonight's story will drag you deep into ritualistic altars, ancient warnings, and the forgotten dominion of a 1,000-year-old werewolf. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this, or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. The mission began with a simple thermal image. During an environmental scan around Missoula, Montana, the Geological Survey team from the local university identified an unusual fissure at the base of a rocky massif north of the city. The satellite indicated a large underground chamber with no record of a visible entrance. That caught the attention of Dr. Noah Blevins, an archaeologist specialized in unregistered structures in North America. He knew the Rocky Mountains held forgotten stories, but something about that signal. Something was off. It was as if the land itself had been patched up there, like a scar hidden for centuries. The images showed an atypical depth, with chambers descending in overlapping layers, like a natural maze carved into the planet's guts. The university approved the funding. Within a few days, Noah assembled a team with several specialists, each with a very clear purpose. Lena Griggs, a biologist specialized in cave organisms, methodical, pragmatic, and obsessed with undocumented species. Samir Yates, a researcher of underground fauna with experience in survival in hostile environments. He was the type of man who preferred talking to a bat over dealing with the press. Security was outsourced, an elite group called Spartan Tactical, led by Desmond Cruz, a war veteran. With him came 5 more men, all armed with automatic rifles, high-caliber pistols, and tactical flashlights mounted on their helmets. On a cloudy Friday in September, the group set out for the isolated area north of Missoula, where the signals had been detected. The location was off the maps, with no official trails or signs. It took days clearing the path with climbing gear, drones, and drills to finally expose the entrance, a wide but low crevice hidden under rocks that seemed to have collapsed on purpose, sealing the access. The first night at camp was restless. Samir commented on the absence of natural sounds. No insects, no birds, no sign of life in the surroundings. "It's like everything here fled a long time ago," he murmured, while checking the motion detectors around the camp. Cruz laughed. "You guys read too much science fiction." But not everyone laughed. The next morning at 5 a.m., the team began the descent. The entrance tunnel extended for dozens of meters until it reached an initial chamber with smooth, dark rock walls. Lena immediately noticed fungi she had never seen before, growing in circular patterns in the corners, pulsing with a faint bioluminescence. Noah was collecting soil samples and muttering to himself, absorbed in the cave's natural architecture. "This doesn't look like it was formed by erosion," he said. "The walls, they were carved. This is artificial, or at least intentional." "By who?" Lena asked, without taking her eyes off the tablet. "Or why?" Samir added. Desmond ordered silence. The sound of their own breathing echoed like a wet sigh between the walls. One of the soldiers, Ferris, made a comment about feeling like they were being watched. Desmond ignored him, but his look gave him away. He felt it too. As they advanced through the galleries, they began to find markings on the rocks, deep scratches in patterns that looked like claws, but no known creature would be capable of digging that deep and with such precision. Then they found bones. Not fossils. Fresh bones. Piled up, broken, with traces of tissue still attached. One of the soldiers knelt down, analyzing a jawbone. It was human. There was a wedding ring stuck between 2 broken teeth. Noah approached, horrified. "This can't be recent." Lena took pictures. The coloring. "This is at most a few weeks old." Ferris vomited in the corner. The silence that followed was dense as concrete. But they pressed on. The adrenaline, the fear, and the scientific curiosity mixed in dangerous doses. Noah insisted. The team was still technically safe. The place, despite being morbid, was stable, at least geologically. After 4 hours of walking, the cave split into 3 different tunnels. "Which one do we follow?" Samir asked. Desmond checked the compass. "None of them follows a natural direction. This is a labyrinth." "Then we mark the way back," said Noah. "But we keep going. We haven't seen the end yet." They chose the central tunnel. Wider, less steep. The oxygen sensors were normal, and the mapping equipment was generating a real-time digital layout. But something failed. Suddenly, the internal GPS signal was lost. The tunnel lights began to flicker. Radio communications started to hiss. "It's just natural interference," Lena tried to argue. But no one replied. Because in that moment, deep at the end of the tunnel, something reflected the flashlight beams. It wasn't stone. It wasn't water. It was a pair of eyes. They were large, yellow, fixed. Without warning, one of the soldiers was pulled into the darkness. A muffled scream, a single stray gunshot, then nothing. His flashlight hit the ground, spinning. The shadow that passed by it was impossible to describe. Something huge and fast. Desmond shouted, "Defensive! Defensive now!" But the terror had already begun. The tunnel exploded into chaos. Lights flickered, gunfire ricocheted off the stone walls, screams mixed with desperate orders. The group instinctively fell back, but they were disoriented, unsure if they were running toward the exit or deeper into the cave. "Ferris was taken!" Noah shouted, frozen in place. Desmond grabbed him by the collar. "If you stand still, you're next." One of the soldiers, Mendez, pointed his weapon in every direction, trying to focus on any suspicious shadow. His eyes were dilated, his face pale as plaster. A deep scratch crossed his vest. Blood trickled out. "I saw it. I saw that thing," he said, unable to control his breathing. "It wasn't a bear, not a wolf. It was something that looked into me. It knew I was there." You're hurt," said Lena, trying to reach for her medical pack. "Stay put," Desmond ordered. "You 3 behind me. Mendez, cover the rear. We move slowly. No more noise." But the silence had already been broken, and the creature, whatever it was, had already chosen its prey. They walked for what felt like hours. The air grew thicker, more humid. The temperature dropped drastically, as if they were descending into the planet's core. Noah noticed the walls were changing. The rocks now had drawings, rudimentary inscriptions, strange shapes that seemed to depict bodies, or parts of them. "Their worship symbols," he murmured, running his fingers over a drawing of a being with a humanoid body and elongated head. "Or warnings." "You archaeologists always find this crap fascinating," Samir retorted. "This is a sacrifice chamber." The path opened into a natural room, tall, with an irregular dome, bones scattered across the floor, piled into heaps. Some were blackened, dried out. Others, still moist. They reeked of rotten flesh and dried blood. A broken stalactite lay covered in human tissue, slowly dripping. Desmond signaled for silence, pointing with 2 fingers at a blood trail that disappeared between 2 natural stone columns. That's when they heard it. Breathing. Slow. Rhythmic. Coming from above. Lena raised her flashlight. The creature was clinging to the wall like a colossal insect. It had long, muscular arms with claws that looked like blades. Its body was covered in dark, damp fur, as if it had crawled out of a flooded tomb. Its eyes were open, fixed on the intruders. It dropped from the ceiling like a living avalanche. Mendez tried to fire, but the creature was faster. In one motion, it drove a claw through his chest. His bones shattered. Blood sprayed over Lena, who fell backward screaming. Mendez's body still twitched as it was dragged into the darkness. Desmond tried to react. He fired and hit. The creature staggered, roaring in pain. A deep sound that echoed through the entire tunnel system, but it didn't fall. Instead, it crouched over Mendez's body and began tearing the flesh with its teeth. Lena covered her mouth with both hands, horrified. "It's feeding," Samir whispered. "It's regenerating with the pieces. We have to go now," Desmond shouted. "Now!" They ran, aimlessly, without strategy, only instinct. The natural labyrinth was unforgiving. At every turn, new forks, and the certainty that the creature was following them. They didn't hear footsteps, no growls, but they knew. They felt it. Desmond led the group with his rifle raised, scanning every direction. Lena and Samir tried to keep up. Noah stumbled, gasping, trying to stay focused. But his eyes were glued to the walls, now showing deeper markings, as if giant claws had shredded the stone. They reached a fork and stopped. "Which way?" Lena screamed. "Right," Desmond answered. "The markings are this way." "Are you sure?" Noah asked. "No," Desmond replied, "but it's that or die here." They followed the tunnel, narrower, darker. The stench was unbearable. The smell of animal urine, dried blood, mold. Lena started coughing. Samir gently pushed her. "Keep going. Don't stop." The passage ended in a smaller opening that led to another chamber. That's where they found Wesley Dorn. He was lying on the ground, half his body covered in rocks, dried blood around him, still breathing. "Wesley!" Noah shouted, kneeling. "He's alive?" Lena asked, desperate. Samir checked. "Yes, but barely. Really bad." Wesley opened his eyes. "Run," he whispered. "It was all on purpose. He left me here." Desmond looked around. "It's a trap." But it was already too late. From the shadows behind the rocks, something moved. Noah slowly turned and saw it, the creature, closer than before. More aware. Its face wasn't that of a beast, but of something ancient. It watched, waited, as if it was enjoying itself. Desmond tried to raise his weapon, but was struck with brutal force. He was thrown against the wall, his skull hitting the rock. Blood dripped from his helmet. He collapsed. Noah screamed. Lena tried to drag Wesley. Samir pulled out his survival knife, a useless but courageous gesture. The creature charged. The attack inside the cave had left scars that no scientific report could ever erase. The University of Montana, after losing contact with the team led by Noah Blevins, decided to halt any rescue attempts and officially terminated the mission. Publicly, they claimed geological instability and risk of collapse. Internally, the truth was more uncomfortable. The team had vanished in an area where not even satellites could track signs of life anymore. However, weeks before this chaos, when everything was still excitement and speculation, the expedition's preparation was treated as a promising academic event. Noah had presented his proposal before a panel of professors and university investors. He used thermal images, seismic data, and solid arguments regarding the region's archaeological importance. He spoke with passion, but there was also a gleam in his eyes that revealed obsession. It's a unique opportunity to explore a place untouched for centuries. The caves in the Rocky Mountains have always been avoided by native tribes, and no satisfactory explanation was ever given. That could mean something important was preserved. The director of the anthropology department, Dr. Miriam Colby, was clear. If we're going to invest in this, you need a multidisciplinary team and full security. That area has a history of landslides and disappearances. Noah nodded. He already knew who he wanted by his side. Lena Griggs was the first to accept the invitation. She was 34 years old, had a solid career as a researcher in extreme biology, and a declared aversion to closed laboratories. She preferred unknown fungi and cave microorganisms over human interaction. To her, the idea of exploring an isolated system was the equivalent of opening a chest sealed by time. "How many species do you think we'll find?" she asked during a call with Noah. "If even half of what I saw in the images is real, maybe more than we could catalog in a decade." Samir Yates, on the other hand, required more convincing. He had already worked in inhospitable caves in South America and unstable regions of Siberia. He was direct, cold, and practical. But the pay, reinforced by private funds linked to the university, was convincing. "If it's just another cave full of rocks, I'm taking the first helicopter out," he said. "But if there's something alive down there, I want to see it with my own eyes." For security, the university was pressured to hire an external team of military level. Noah suggested Spartan Tactical, based on a recommendation from a former colleague who had served with Desmond Cruz, a former Marine with a clean record and a reputation for maintaining control in extreme situations. Desmond wasn't a man of long words. At 41 years old, his face marked by discreet scars and a constant vigilant gaze, he simply requested aerial transport, authorization for heavy weaponry, and full tactical decision-making freedom in the field. "If I go in, I'm in charge." Noah agreed. He had no intention of arguing with someone who could kill with a glance. With the team assembled, logistics took shape. Drones for internal mapping, environmental sensors, autonomous breathing equipment, drilling and sampling tools. The university provided a civilian helicopter to take the team to a plateau near the fissure site. But something began to bother Lena days before departure. During one of the meetings while organizing the entry, she showed an old map of the region found in the university museum's archives. Among the rudimentary mountain drawings, there were inscriptions made by the Blackfeet tribes, who had inhabited the area centuries earlier. A symbol appeared repeatedly over the approximate location of the cave, a circle surrounded by claws. "It's a seal," she explained. "Oral records speak of a spirit of the depths, a guardian, something that sleeps." "Legends," said Desmond, bored. "Natives have hundreds of them." "Legends that sometimes come from forgotten facts," Lena replied. Samir analyzed the documents carefully. "These markings, they're not common, and they're not decorative. This is an exclusion map, a warning." Noah, however, was determined. "That's exactly what interests us, what no one else dared to explore." The group departed from Missoula on a cold morning, using 4x4 vehicles until they reached a remote clearing. The hike up took a full day. Night fell, and the camp was set up near the spot where the satellites had pinpointed the entrance. Around the fire, as they ate in silence, they heard the first sign that something was watching them. It wasn't a sound. It was an absence. The silence was absolute. Samir lifted his eyes from the plate. "Where are the crickets?" "And the birds?" Lena added. Desmond stood up, looking into the darkness between the trees. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. It was as if the entire forest had gone into mourning. The next morning, the group woke before sunrise. The cold was biting. The kind of cold that seeps through the bones even with layers of thermal clothing. Lena remained silent, staring into the darkness between the trees, where she swore she had seen a pair of eyes during the night. "You should have filmed it," Samir commented upon seeing her distant look. "It's not the kind of thing you can record," she replied. "You just feel it." Desmond ignored the comments. He was busy organizing the team's gear, testing radios, checking ammunition, and verifying the infrared sensors. One of his men, Collins, approached him. I don't like this, boss. This place smells like an ambush. We're not at war, Desmond answered, but his voice lacked conviction. Still, keep your rifle ready. Around 8 a.m., the team reached the entry point. The fissure between the rocks still looked like an anomaly. A perfectly aligned opening between two massive formations that seemed to have been displaced by an unimaginable force. It was as if the earth itself had been split in two by a blade. With tactical flashlights mounted on their helmets and portable breathing gear, the group began to descend. The entrance was narrow, forcing everyone to squeeze through about 20 meters before reaching the first chamber, a wide space with needle-thin stalactites hanging from the ceiling. The ground was uneven, with signs of erosion and mineral deposits that glowed slightly under artificial light. "We're in," Noah confirmed over the radio. "Stable location, beginning sweep." Around them, the sound of breathing amplified by their helmets mixed with the rustling of gear and the clicking of sensors. Lena collected soil samples and analyzed fungal colonies on the walls. Samir checked the air density. Up to that point, everything seemed within expectations. But then, they found the first mark. It was a lateral gash, as if a giant claw had torn through the rock. It wasn't a natural crack. It was deep, curved, made with concentrated force and precision. "This isn't erosion," said Samir, crouching down. "This was dug." "Or sculpted," Noah added. "But by who? Or what?" The group moved on. The passages grew narrower, more irregular. The rock seemed to change texture, as if it had been melted and then rapidly cooled. In certain stretches, the air was warmer. In others, freezing. The environment was unstable, as if the tunnel system itself was alive. Hours passed. Desmond, now uneasy, demanded they stop and return to the surface. But Noah was increasingly hypnotized by the discoveries. Lena, though more cautious, couldn't ignore the unique biological data. Samir warned of abnormal CO2 levels in specific parts of the cave. And then the sound returned. A snap, long, distant. It came from inside the cave. Everyone froze. "Echo?" asked Lena. "No," Samir replied. "It's moving." Desmond raised his fist. Everyone went silent. The sound repeated, closer, like bones being slowly crushed. "Weapons ready," he ordered. But there was no attack. Not yet. They continued, and found a wide chamber, with a towering ceiling and a natural opening in the center, like a stone throat descending into a dark abyss. Collins tossed his flashlight down. It took 5 seconds to reach the bottom. No response, no sound of impact. Noah examined the walls. Inscriptions, spiral markings, intersected with drawings of human-like figures being devoured by beastly forms. "This isn't decorative symbolism," he said. "It's narrative." Lena approached. "What does it say?" Noah ran his fingers along a line of figures. They came, and were hunted, sacrificed, devoured. This is a horror chronicle. The cave itself tells the story of those who dared to enter. The radio hissed. It was a strange interference, not electronic, but almost organic, as if something whispered between the frequencies. "That's iron interference," Samir tried to justify. Or maybe not. Then, from the tunnel they had come through, something moved. Lights went out for a few seconds. When they came back on, Collins was gone. A muffled scream. His flashlight spun on the ground. Desmond advanced with 2 men. They found blood on the ground, splattered across the walls. But no body. The group went on full alert. And there, in the middle of the tension, something snapped inside Lena. She stared at Noah in anger. "You knew this wasn't just a cave. You knew there was more here." "I suspected," he admitted, "but I didn't imagine this." Samir stepped closer, furious. You put us in a trap." He looked up at the cave ceiling, as if expecting to see someone there, hidden among the shadows. "There's more here, more than we can understand." Desmond stood, covered in blood, sweat dripping from his face. One of his soldiers, Collins, had vanished before everyone's eyes. And now, a voice echoed through the radio with awareness. He pressed his lips together, holding back the urge to pull everyone out. "We keep going," Noah said. "We can't stop now. We need to understand what we're facing." Desmond grabbed him by the collar and shoved him against the cave wall. "You want to understand? I want to keep these people alive. One more dead and I'm taking full control of this. We're already in. If we turn back now, we'll get even more lost. The only way out is forward," Noah insisted, his voice trembling not with courage, but fear. Desmond released him with a sharp push and signaled for the others to move. The next tunnel was narrower, forcing everyone to crouch as they moved. Breathing grew heavier, and the heat intensified. It was like entering the lungs of the earth, each step taking the team deeper into a place that was never meant to be touched. The walls there were alive in a different way. Fungi pulsed in reddish tones, moving slightly under the touch of light. Lena examined them quickly, but her eyes constantly darted back, checking if something was following them. The group stopped at a fork. Two paths, both damp. One sloped downward at an almost vertical angle. The other extended to the left, down a rough, dark path. "Pick fast," Desmond said. "I don't like this feeling. It's like something's waiting." Samir raised the digital mapping tablet, but the system failed again. The screen froze, then went black. He cursed under his breath. Noah pointed to the descending path. "If we want to reach the heart of this cave, we have to go down. The inscription suggests the center of everything is down there." Desmond hated those words. "Then we're going to hell." They descended using ropes one by one. The drop was nearly 10 meters. The light faded. The silence deepened. As they touched the floor of the new chamber, everyone felt the air shift. It was thick, warm. Moisture clung to the rocks, and there was a barely perceptible sound. A low, constant hum, like the snore of a sleeping beast. That's when Lena stopped and looked at the ceiling. "Someone's here," she whispered. Samir turned. "Where?" "There." She pointed to a curled-up body in a corner, one of the soldiers. From the uniform, it was Collins. Desmond ran to him. His eyes were open, but his whole body was convulsing. His face was covered in cuts and bites, and on his leg, flesh was missing. "He's alive," Desmond murmured, shocked. "But how did he get here?" Collins tried to speak, but his jaw was broken. Only blood bubbles came from his mouth. Lena looked around. He didn't escape. He was left here. "As bait," Samir said, swallowing hard. Desmond stood back up. "Weapons up, eyes on the shadows, now." The darkness took shape. Before anyone could react, the soldier Harper was yanked backward violently. A sharp crack, followed by the unmistakable sound of flesh being torn. His flashlight fell, spinning on the ground. In a flash, Lena saw what looked like a monstrous paw closing around the man's neck, dragging him like a dying animal. Desmond and the others opened fire immediately. Bullets ricocheted off the walls, hitting something. Of that they were certain. A muffled howl reverberated through the chamber. But it wasn't an irrational sound. There was control in that noise, as if it were testing them, provoking them. "It senses us," Lena whispered, trembling. "It's not attacking out of instinct. It's choosing." "It's not a beast," said Samir. "It's something that thinks." "Stay close," Desmond ordered. "Rear guard in position. We need to get out of here now." But the cave felt different. The trails they had come through had changed. A fork had vanished. The place had shifted, as if the environment itself was reshaping in real time. Samir looked around, trying to make sense of it. It's not just him, it's this place. He knows every inch of it. He separates us and hunts. The tension boiled inside each of them. Even Noah, who had insisted on reason until now, began to fall silent, observing the marks on the stones with frightened eyes. Then, along the path, they found something that made no sense. A torch, lit, on the wall. Desmond stepped toward it slowly. This is fresh. This was just lit. He wants us to follow, Lena said. He's guiding us. Why? Noah asked. Samir answered without hesitation. Because he's playing. Desmond made a gesture. Let's go. But stay ready. Anything moves? Shoot it. The trail led them to a circular chamber with rock columns at the center and drawings on the walls. But this time, they weren't ancient inscriptions. They were recent, drawn in blood. Grotesque images of men torn apart, with broken bodies and eyes ripped out. One of the soldiers stood frozen, staring at them, fingers trembling on his weapon's trigger. Then something dropped from the ceiling, a wet, heavy sound. It was Harper. Or what was left of him. The torso was intact, but no arms, no jaw, eyes still open. The body landed right in the middle of the group. The creature didn't show itself immediately, but the smell came first. Rotting flesh, animal sweat, clotted blood. Then the sound of something large moving in the shadows, circling the room. Lena was frozen. This isn't random. This is a warning. The creature appeared for a second. And that was enough. A body covered in fur, muscles bulging under dark skin, claws as long as knives. But the most disturbing thing was how it moved. Not like a beast, but like a conscious predator. It vanished as quickly as it came. Desmond aimed his weapon at the spot where the creature had been, but hesitated. He could have killed all of us just now. But he didn't, said Noah. He wants us to keep going. Lena turned, eyes wide. He wants to show us something. Oh, or lead us to where he'll kill us one by one, said Samir. They kept going, because there was no other option. The next chamber was even larger, and the walls were marked by tribal symbols mixed with distorted words, as if one language had fused with another over centuries. In the center, there was an altar. On it, the body of an animal, some kind of deer, mutilated, chest opened, entrails exposed. This is a ritual, said Noah, a kind of offering. Desmond no longer spoke. He just paced in circles, watching the corners, waiting for the next attack. That's when they heard it again. Footsteps. Not just one, several. But there was only one monster, wasn't there? Then they saw the bodies. They hung from the ceiling like forgotten puppets. Soldiers, people, all impaled by hooks embedded in their flesh. Some still twitched slightly, in spasms. One of them was an unknown man, wearing old climbing gear, maybe from a previous expedition, maybe from decades ago. How many people have come in here? Lena asked, choking on her words. Samir pointed at the walls. These symbols, they're repeating in cycles, like they're counting how many times he's hunted. Or how many survived, Noah added. And then, in the middle of the room, they saw something move. Not the creature, another body. It was the soldier Jensen. He was alive, barely, but alive. Help! He groaned, eyes barely open. It's a trap! He wants you to find me! Desmond ran to him, but Noah shouted, Don't touch him! But it was too late. One of the pillars exploded into pieces. The creature leapt from inside the stone as if it had merged with the darkness. Desmond fired. Samir fired. Lena fell to the ground, blood sprayed. Jensen's scream was the last human sound before the horror took over. The attack didn't last more than 30 seconds, long enough to turn a silent room into a slaughterhouse. Jensen's body was torn in two right before Desmond's eyes, who tried in vain to drive the creature away with bullets that ricocheted or buried themselves uselessly into its muscle. Samir threw a flash grenade, a desperate attempt that only exposed the horror for a brief instant. The creature had features that bordered on human, but were buried beneath layers of ancient savagery. Deep-set, fierce eyes that moved with purpose. Twisted muscles, claws like black blades. A mouth unnaturally widened, as if it had been ripped open to house too many fangs. And yet, there was something in the way it observed them. Something calculated, something rational. The grenade's blast only enraged the monster. It lunged at Samir, knocking him to the ground. Desmond rushed to him and fired straight at the creature's head. 2 bullets hit. Dark blood gushed, thick, almost black. The creature howled and pulled back. It didn't fall. It didn't flee. It just stared at them for another second and vanished again into the darkness. Samir was wounded, his left leg shredded, bone exposed. Lena pulled him back, pressing the artery with a strip of her own shirt. The blood was flowing too fast. "You'll die here if you don't move," she screamed. "I'm already dead," he replied, voice fading. "But you can still get out. Find a way. Get out of this hellhole." Noah approached, sweating, trembling. It bled. We heard it, but not enough. Desmond tossed aside the empty mag and loaded another. "It's not invincible, but it knows how to fight. This isn't an animal." "Then what is it?" Lena asked, voice cracking. "A predator with millennia of practice," said Noah. "Maybe? Something that should never have been awakened." The group was now down to 4. Desmond, Lena, Samir, wounded, and Noah. They ran. With no clear direction, just fleeing the room where the monster had revealed itself fully. The stench of blood and sulfur still clung to their clothes. All 3 minds trembling on the edge of collapse. They found a narrow tunnel and followed it. It was wet, tight, forcing them to crawl. Every sound felt like an approach. Every drop of water like a step. After more than half an hour crawling, they reached a circular opening that led into a new chamber. Unlike the others, this one resembled a natural dome, with rocks hanging from the ceiling like spikes. The center was dry with markings on the floor, signs of movement, footprints. But they weren't old. They were fresh, surrounded by blood, dragged. "This is where it lives," Lena whispered. "Or where it waits for the prey that survived long enough to make it this far," Noah replied. Desmond approached a wall where even more bizarre inscriptions were found. Ancient symbols mixed with archaic English words. Almost as if a language had deformed over time. Names were scratched in rows. All erased. Except one. At the top, Yagamar. "It's a name," Noah murmured. "Maybe an entity they feared or worshipped." Samir coughed blood. He was pale. "That thing has a name? That doesn't make sense." "These inscriptions, they're very old," Noah replied, eyes fixed on the markings. "I can't say how old, but they don't look recent. Whatever this thing is, it's been here a long time, long before any of us were born." Lena looked at him, nervous. "You're saying this creature survived here, alone, for centuries?" "I don't know," Noah said. "But it behaves unlike any animal. It doesn't kill out of instinct. It chooses. It thinks. This isn't just a predator. It knows this place like it's part of it." The body hanging in front of them was a message, a manifesto of horror. The flesh was cut with precision, the stitching done with strips of the man's own skin. The word carved into his chest, Intruders! Still bled slowly, as if it had been done moments earlier. Desmond turned away. Samir closed his eyes. Lena, however, stepped closer. This wasn't impulsive. This was methodical. He's leaving marks, showing he knows exactly what he's doing. Noah scanned the walls around them, where more circular symbols had accumulated, as if recording cycles or counts. These drawings, it's like he's keeping notes. Like this is some kind of visual journal, but in stone. How many people has he killed? How many times has he done this? Desmond remained silent. Sweat streamed down the side of his neck, his rifle still steady in his hands, but his eyes had lost their focus. "We're in his den," he said finally. "He let us get this far. He prepared this path." Lena looked up. "Do you think we can still get out?" "Only if he lets us," Samir replied bitterly. They decided to retreat. The decision wasn't made with words, but with looks. The place they were in was no longer a research site. It was an altar, a graveyard. And one of them was wounded. Samir, who, despite his ruined leg, was trying to stay lucid. As they returned through the corridors, they noticed parts of the path seemed different. Some rocks had shifted positions, as if the cave moved in silence when no one was watching. It was a living labyrinth, and something was at its center. Desmond began marking the tunnels with fluorescent paint, but even that disappeared. On one of the walls where he had left an arrow, there was now another inscription carved over it. It wasn't a human mark, it was a claw. As they walked, they heard something ahead. Screams. Human voices in desperation. "There's someone alive," Lena said, breathless. "It could be a trap," Desmond warned. "Or it could be someone like Collins," said Noah. "Left there, waiting." They followed the sound, cautiously, in silence. The tension made every step feel like a sentence. And then they found it. Not one person, but many. Bodies hanging, stacked, some still fresh, others in advanced decomposition. Different clothing, varied equipment, old expeditions, men and women. Some in outfits from decades ago. Others so recent they still wore modern flashlight models. "This isn't from now," Noah said, almost in a trance. "He's been doing this for a long time." "These people disappeared and no one ever knew," said Lena. Samir, already weakened, leaned against a rock and slid to the floor. "How many teams came in here before us? How many made it back?" Silence answered for itself. The next room was the final blow to their sanity. It was a sanctuary. At least it looked like one. In the center, a stone formation resembling a rudimentary throne, with bones fitted between crevices. A human head rested at the base of the seat. And behind it, etched marks that looked like tributes, recognitions, or dates. Desmond stepped closer slowly. "This is where he rests?" Noah looked around. "No. This is where he judges. We're inside his mind now. And this is the final judgment." That's when something fell from the ceiling. Samir screamed. It wasn't the werewolf. It was one of the soldiers, Ferris, still alive, still breathing. Eyes gouged out, tongue cut. Lena tried to keep Ferris conscious, but it was useless. The man breathed with difficulty, coughing blood, his eye sockets empty, stitched shut. His muscles trembled involuntarily. Whatever he had endured, there was no coming back. Samir looked on with a distant stare, pale, his leg infected, hands trembling. He knew he wouldn't leave, but he was still trying to stay in control. "This thing studies us," he said. "It analyzes how we react. It tests our limits." "Like it's learning," Lena added. Noah shook his head. No, it already knows. Everything here. He's done it before, countless times. We're just following the same script as those before us, and they all ended up hanging. By that point, the cave felt deeper. The walls were different, darker. The rock formations looked twisted, like they had been shaped by the heat of some ancient furnace. Moisture dripped from the stones, mixed with something thick, red, which Lena refused to examine. Desmond stood, checking his ammo. There's no turning back. If we stop, we die here. He's surrounding us, driving us somewhere. A kill zone, Noah murmured. Or a spectacle, Samir replied. Ferris groaned, a guttural, aimless sound, and then, with a final spasm, he died. Lena stepped back, breathing short, eyes wet. We can't keep going like this. He's going to hunt us down one by one. Then we have to hunt first, said Desmond. Whatever it is, it bleeds. It felt it when I shot it. It can be hurt. That means it can die. What about Samir? Noah asked, hesitant. Samir raised his hand. Don't think about me. If you get a chance, take it. I'm just dead weight now. Desmond looked at him for a moment and gave a dry nod. They moved down a tunnel to the right. With each step, the ground felt more alive, as if the cave itself pulsed with the creature's breath. And then, they started seeing new signs. Drag marks, footprints, fresh blood, and a sound, low, metallic, repetitive, a creaking. Noah was the first to notice. This is a trap, he said, stopping. He wants us here. There are no more forks. He funneled us in this direction. Desmond moved forward cautiously until he found what appeared to be a narrow passage between two large stone columns, but it was fake. Crossing it triggered a mechanism. Bone spikes, embedded in the ceiling, dropped like guillotines. One of the remaining soldiers, named Rivers, was impaled through the thigh. Blood sprayed, and his screams echoed like death wails. Lena rushed to help him, but in the next instant, the creature's shadow appeared behind the formation. Desmond fired, shouting. Noah pulled Lena. Samir stayed behind, motionless, staring at the creature as it emerged with the calm of an ancient king upon his throne of terror. The fight was quick. Brutal. Rivers was still screaming when the creature grabbed him and snapped his spine in half like rotten wood. The sound was dry, irreversible. Samir, even injured, tried to crawl toward his knife. The creature watched him, paused, didn't attack, just watched, and then backed away into the shadows again, leaving Rivers mutilated on the ground and Samir staring into the void. Desmond helped Lena back through the tunnel they had come from. Noah trembled, trying to keep his flashlight steady. He let us live again, said Lena, sweating. Why? Noah responded, his voice barely audible. Because it's not over yet. Rivers' body was twisted at a grotesque angle, pinned between bones and rock. Blood ran down the surface like red paint violently splattered, forming chaotic patterns. The creature hadn't taken the body. It had left it there. Desmond clenched his jaw, pacing in circles with his weapon ready. More and more, the experienced soldier seemed to realize he was fighting something he couldn't control. This wasn't a mission. It was a game. And they were on the wrong side of the board. Lena helped Samir lean against a wall. He could barely keep his eyes open, but he was still conscious. "Don't leave me here," he said, his voice weak and raspy. "You're coming out with me," Lena replied, even knowing she was lying. Desmond stepped closer. "We have two options. Try to go back the way we came and get lost, or keep going. Look for a way out. He knows we're scared. But maybe, just maybe, he doesn't know everything." The next path spiraled downward, as if leading them to the bottom of a funnel. The walls were covered in claw marks, ancient inscriptions, and decomposed body parts embedded in cracks, parts that seemed to have been placed there as ornaments. Noah started noticing a pattern. These walls, they tell a story, like chapters, and now we're at the end. Lena looked at him, her eyes wide. End of what? The cycle, he answered. It always ends with the same number of bodies. There's always one left. Samir started laughing, a sound more like sobbing. So who's the lucky one this time? Desmond stopped walking. Ahead, there was a large natural chamber, but this one was different. There was fire, torches lit on the walls, a warm, living light. Someone, or something, had prepared it. In the center of the room, a stone altar, and on it, what looked like a piece of ancient armor, from a forgotten time, with claw marks engraved on it, as if it had once belonged to another invader. Killed long ago, and behind the altar, the creature, fully visible, standing, raised in all its monstrous height, golden eyes reflecting the fire, mouth half open, controlled breathing. There was something almost human about it, and at the same time, absolutely opposite to humanity. Every detail of the body seemed shaped for hunting. Muscles like steel cables, limbs disproportionate, upright yet animalistic posture. But it didn't attack. It just watched them. Lena swallowed hard. Why? Is it just watching? It's evaluating, Noah replied. It wants to see who's the weakest, the slowest, the most broken. The tension snapped the air like glass. Desmond didn't wait. He fired. And this time the creature responded. With fury. It moved like a living shadow. Advanced with impossible speed. Desmond shouted for Lena and Noah to run, but he stayed, unloading his entire rifle. He hit it, knocked the creature down, but didn't kill it. It rolled, got up, and leapt onto him. The impact shattered bones. Desmond's jaw dislocated on the second blow. He still tried to reach for his sidearm, but the claws pierced through his chest with surgical brutality. Lena screamed. Noah fell backward. Samir just watched. The creature pulled Desmond by the claw lodged in his chest and hurled him against the wall. The body snapped in half. Intestines spilled across the floor. Blood covered part of the ancient inscriptions. It turned to the others, but didn't advance. It just walked toward the altar, and then, with the same calm with which it had appeared, knelt before the fire, as if it were praying. Lena grabbed Noah by the arm. Now! She yelled. Run! They dragged Samir out of the room, through a narrow trail that opened to the left, partially revealed by a collapse. It was unstable, but it led upward. Behind them, the creature didn't follow. At least, not yet. But the low laughter that echoed through the entire cave, a guttural, almost intentional laugh, followed them for much longer. The escape through the narrow tunnel was an act of desperation. Lena dragged Samir with force, despite the weight of his body and her own trembling legs. Noah carried the flashlight, but he was shaking so badly the beam barely stayed steady. Behind them, the darkness felt alive, warm, watchful. The creature wasn't chasing them in a hurry. That was the most terrifying part. It knew that sooner or later, they would all stop. The tunnel did lead upward, yes, but it was uneven, slippery, and it showed no sign of connecting to the main exit. It was like a hole slowly closing in, suffocating whoever dared to pass through. Samir groaned. The wound on his leg was infected, releasing a putrid smell. Lena knew he wouldn't last much longer, but she wouldn't abandon him. Not yet. We have to stop, said Noah, gasping. If we stop, he finds us, Lena replied without looking back. The air's getting hotter, Noah added nervously. We're heading back to the center. He knew. He pushed us here on purpose. The tunnel ended in a low circular chamber, with rocks scattered like obstacles. A dead end. Shit, Lena muttered. This is it. Samir began to laugh. But it was a weak laugh, filled with pain. He won, he said, staring at the ceiling. Like all the others. He knows this place like his own body. Lena leaned Samir against the wall and knelt beside him. Noah scanned the sides of the chamber with the flashlight, desperate for a crack, a gap, any passage. But there was nothing. Just stone and silence. For a few minutes they stayed there, listening to nothing. Until suddenly they heard a sound that turned their stomachs. It wasn't the creature. It was a voice. Familiar. It was Desmond's. Lena? Noah? The two looked at each other. Samir tried to get up but collapsed again, groaning. He died, said Noah. You saw it. He was destroyed. Then it's not him, Lena replied coldly. The voice repeated. Lena, help me. Noah backed toward the tunnel entrance. The flashlight trembled in his hand. The voice was coming from inside the wall. It was impossible. But there it was, whispering, begging. This can't be, Noah said, backing away more. It's him, Samir murmured, eyes nearly gone. He can imitate. He knows us. He listens. He repeats. The sound stopped suddenly. Then, something fell at the tunnel entrance. A head. It was Desmond's. No eyes, no jaw. The skin of his face stretched into a sewn smile. Lena didn't scream. She simply closed her eyes for a moment. Samir looked at her. I can't go on, and I don't want to die by his hands. You understand? Lena nodded, silently. Samir reached out and handed her a grenade he had clipped to his belt. When he comes, make it count. Noah tried to say something, but the words got lost. His breath was a constant tremble, his face drenched in sweat, his eyes bloodshot. Then came the sound of footsteps. From the tunnel. Heavy. Slow. Almost respectful. Lena looked at Samir one last time. He smiled. And when the creature entered the chamber, eyes glowing in the dark like headlights from an ancient hell, Lena pulled Noah and ran. Behind them, an explosion. The cave shook. Samir had kept his promise. But when Lena and Noah looked back, they saw something that froze their bones. The creature was still standing, covered in blood, partially on fire, its flesh slowly regenerating as its eyes locked on them, as if to say, now there are only two of you. The tunnel felt endless. Lena and Noah ran in silence, guided only by the flickering flashlight and the sound of their own footsteps echoing against the cave's damp walls. Neither dared look back. They knew what they'd see. The thing was still alive. It had survived the explosion. Maybe it hadn't even felt pain. Samir had died for nothing. Lena kept her head up, but the weight of guilt crushed her shoulders. The smell of blood clung to her skin. She couldn't forget Samir's look in the final second before pulling the grenade's pin. A look of acceptance, of resignation. And still, it hadn't been enough to stop the creature. Noah was struggling to keep going, panting, his face pale. His legs shook. And worse, they both knew they were walking in circles. The cave had closed in around them like a living trap. It was a labyrinth designed to disorient, separate, and consume. We have to stop, he whispered. If we stop, we die, Lena answered. Or worse, he does what he did to Desmond. The flashlight began to flicker, a sign the batteries were dying. Lena tapped the body of the device, trying to keep it lit, but the light wavered. That's when they heard it. A voice. Lena, help. Please." They stopped. The voice came from far away. It was weak, tearful, familiar. Noah's eyes widened. "No, it can't be." It was the voice of Aaron, one of the assistant scientists who had been at the base camp before the expedition descended. She had never entered. She should have gone back with the helicopter. "She stayed up top," Lena said. "Impossible." "Then why are we hearing her voice?" asked Noah, trembling. "Because he's using her." Another trap. They knew it. And still, they started following the sound. The voices intensified. Not just Aaron's, others, soldiers, scientists. Cries of pain, calls for help, distorted laughter. "He's using our memories," Lena murmured, "as bait." Then they saw it. There, lying at the end of a narrow gallery, among rocks soaked in dried blood, was a woman. Aaron, or something that looked very much like her. She was unconscious, arms broken, face swollen, but alive. Lena ran. Noah hesitated. His instincts screamed for them to stop, but the fear of leaving someone behind was stronger. As she approached, Lena saw the woman's face move. Her eyes opened slowly. "He left me here," she whispered. "He wants you to come. You're hurt. We're getting you out," said Lena, kneeling beside her. That's when she noticed. The woman's skin was cut symmetrically, like a macabre surgery, and there were metal hooks embedded under her shoulders, as if she'd been hung there recently and kept alive just for this moment. Noah screamed. The shadow emerged behind them. The werewolf, huge, towering, breathing slow. Lena sprang up and tried to pull Aaron, but it was too late. The creature lunged. Aaron was yanked backward violently. A dry tear split the air. The creature lifted her like a broken toy and hurled the body against the wall. Lena pulled Noah with all her strength. They ran. They didn't scream, didn't cry. They just ran, like rats in a trap. The werewolf didn't chase immediately, but they knew. It was nearby. It always was. The tunnel through which Lena and Noah escaped was narrow, with jagged stones on the sides that tore their clothes and arms with every step. The darkness swallowed them. The flashlight had died completely. Now they walked guided only by instinct and the terror of stopping. Behind them, the creature made no sound, but it was there. They knew. "You saw what it did," Noah said, panting. "She was alive. Aaron, if that was really her." He waited for us to get close. He wanted to see our reaction. "He's more than a predator," Lena replied. "He's a torturer, a manipulator. He wants more than to kill." "He wants to break us," Noah added. The air grew hotter, thicker. Lena stretched out her hand and touched the wall. It was damp, and it trembled slightly, as if it were alive. The sensation was like walking inside an organism, not a stone structure. After a few minutes, they reached a fork. The two looked at each other. They had no idea which path led to the exit, or if either did. But the left one had a faint breeze. Fresh air. It was the first time in hours they had felt anything other than the cave's stench of rot. "Let's go," said Lena. They walked the narrow path and soon noticed something disturbing. The walls around them were clean. No blood, no marks, no bones. And then they realized something else surrounded them. Mirrors. Not of glass, but of precisely polished surfaces in the rock, as if someone, at some point, had shaped them to reflect. They didn't just show what was in front of them. They showed memories. In the reflection, Lena saw her own face, covered in blood. But not from that day. It was from years ago, a memory of the forest where she lost her younger brother, attacked by something never explained. She dropped to her knees. This is impossible." Noah looked into another spot and saw his father, dying in a hospital bed. And he heard the words he never had the courage to say aloud. I should have stayed. The werewolf was there, again, not in flesh, but in the images, the voices, the memories, as if it had always lived inside them. This is it, Noah said. He doesn't want to kill. He wants to empty us. Lena stood up, eyes red, but firm. Then let's get out, before he takes what's left. They moved forward. At the end of the gallery there was a fissure, a vertical shaft, narrow. Light filtered from the top, a faint glow, maybe from the moon. The exit. Can you climb? Lena asked. Noah nodded, but not convincingly. Lena started to climb. She used her nails, her feet, her elbows. Each meter felt like a battle. The slippery stones made progress hard, but the thought of escaping that hell gave her strength. Halfway up, she heard Noah scream. She looked down. The werewolf was there. This time, it didn't run. It just walked slowly toward Noah, who tried to back away, arms spread in a plea. Please, don't kill me, he said. And then, for the first time, the creature stopped. It stood tall, still, watching Noah intensely, as if considering something. Lena saw it all from above in silence, caught between escape and terror. But she didn't hear what happened next, because the creature leaned in, looked Noah in the eyes, and didn't kill him. Lena reached the top of the fissure and threw herself out with the last ounce of energy she had left. She fell sideways onto a damp rock platform, her chest heaving violently. The air there was purer, colder. Something inside her said the surface was close. Maybe meters above, maybe just one more corridor. But it wasn't the sense of freedom that took over. It was the absence. Noah didn't climb. She turned, leaning over the edge of the fissure, trying to see. But down there was only darkness. Noah! She screamed. No answer. The cave had gone silent again. That absence of sound, which she now recognized as a sign of his presence, stretched around her like a curtain. She knew. He was there. Just watching. Bastard, she whispered. Lena stood with difficulty. Her legs were cut, fingers bleeding, and a dull pain throbbed in her ribs. But she was still alive, and determined. More than that, full of rage. She found a small gap between rocks and moved through it. A narrow, twisting corridor. And soon, she reached a new chamber, the largest of them all. What she saw there froze her blood. It was a sanctuary, wider, more elaborate, and covered in skulls. Hundreds of them, human, animal. Some deformed, as if they belonged to something that no longer existed, or had never existed outside that cave. At the center, on an altar, rested a colossal skeleton, nearly 3 meters tall, with claws still attached to its fossilized bones. An ancestor, a father maybe. Around it, torches burned. Someone, or something, kept them lit, like a private cult, a temple of reverence for its own species. Lena approached. The floor had symbols drawn in dried blood. And at the back, wedged between 2 stone columns, was a passage, blocked by bones. But before she could react, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned. Noah, alone, covered in dirt, scratches all over his body, but alive. She ran to him, relieved. How? She started to ask. He shook his head, stunned. He let me go. He stared at me and walked away. Lena looked at him, confused. Why? Noah didn't answer. He just swallowed hard, visibly shaken. He's more than we thought, he murmured. Much more. Lena looked around, her face hardening. Then we end it here. Now. She picked up what was left of the heat flares and a cartridge of geological blasting fuel. It was weak, improvised, but maybe enough to bring down the entire room. Noah hesitated. If we do this, we die too. Lena lit the makeshift fuse. Maybe it's the only way to stop him. But then the voice came. Not an imitation, not a whisper, a voice, deep, intelligent, articulate. Not so fast. The voice swept through the chamber like an icy current, grave, slow, precise. Lena froze. Noah dropped to his knees, eyes wide. The creature emerged from the shadows with controlled steps. There was no rush, no immediate threat. It walked like someone who had already won. And indeed, it had. The werewolf stood before them, nearly 3 meters of muscle covered in dense fur, dark as burned coal. The scars on its body told a story the two of them would never understand. But the eyes were human, intelligent, ancient. Lena tried to raise her weapon. The werewolf extended its hand. The gun flew from hers with a sharp but restrained blow. "You are persistent," it said. The voice didn't come from a monstrous throat. It came with clarity, modulation, as if it had spent centuries learning to speak like that. Noah was speechless. Lena, despite her fear, stepped forward. "What are you?" The werewolf observed her for a few seconds, then looked around the hall, his eyes scanning the skulls and symbols like someone contemplating his own memory. "I've been called many names," he said. "Demon, spirit, curse. But you like to simplify. You call it werewolf. And you?" "Speak?" asked Noah, still trembling. "I speak," he replied. "I think, and I decide." "Why did you spare us?" Lena clenched her fists. The werewolf tilted his head slightly. "You entered my territory, disturbed my peace. I would have killed all of you, as I always did. But today, I chose something different." "Why?" The creature stepped closer. Lena smelled it. It wasn't just blood. It was ancient earth, old wood, dried flesh. It was the scent of death that had survived through time. "Because one of you will carry the truth." They fell silent. "You experienced the true terror of this place, lived what others never lived to tell. Your story will be a reminder, a warning, so that no one else enters here, so that my peace is never disturbed again." Noah stepped back. "Are you ancient?" The werewolf looked at him with something that almost resembled weariness. "I've lived for over 1,000 years. I saw empires rise and fall. I saw religions form. I saw man try to dominate the earth and fail. And now, he tries to dominate even what's beneath it." "Are you the last?" Lena asked. "No," he answered calmly. "But I am one of the first, an elder. The others sleep, or were hunted. I survived because I learned to hide, to wait, to kill when necessary, and now, I warn." He looked at Lena. "You will not leave alive." She stepped back, eyes wide. But then he pointed to Noah. "He will tell the tale." Lena screamed, tried to run, but the creature was faster. With a single blow, he pierced her chest with his claws. No prolonged pain, no hesitation, just the end. Noah screamed, collapsing to his knees. The werewolf approached, looking him in the eyes. "You are a lucky man, Noah. You live to carry the fear forward." And then he turned and vanished into the darkness of the temple, leaving only silence. Noah wept, but he was alive. Noah remained on his knees far too long. Lena's body lay just a few feet away, still warm, her blood slowly spreading across the stone floor. He couldn't look. Not yet. The werewolf had disappeared into the corridors of the cave like an ancient shadow that simply blended into the dark. There was no sound of escape, no rush. Just that oppressive presence that, even absent, still filled the air. Noah tried to understand why he was alive. Why him? Perhaps he had been spared as a form of torture. Or perhaps truly, the monster wanted the truth to survive in words. For the fear to be seeded through story, not just corpses, but all of it felt like punishment. Not a gift. He stood up, staggering. Every part of his body ached. His mind was in shambles. His eyes could barely focus, but there was still something inside him screaming. Survive. And then he saw it. In the left corner of the hall, hidden between two columns, there was an almost invisible path. A staircase carved into stone, narrow, ancient, covered in moss and dried blood. The way out, or another trap? He didn't know. But he had no more options. With trembling hands he began to climb. Each step felt narrower, steeper. The air became less dense. The heat slowly gave way. The light from the surface, faint as it was, began to filter through the cracks at the top. But then he heard it again, the voice, coming from within the cave, low, distant, but now, speaking to someone else. He will leave and tell. Let it serve as a warning. It was the werewolf's voice, and then another one, unknown, deeper, raspier. Another creature, another presence. You should have killed them all. Noah froze. There was another one, maybe several. The werewolf responded calmly. That was my judgment, my territory, my decision. Silence, tense, prolonged. Then the unknown voice replied, They will come, again. They always will. And they will always find death, the werewolf answered. Noah climbed the final steps, his heart pounding in his chest. When he passed through the exit crevice and collapsed on the other side, panting, filthy, bloodied, it felt like returning from a world that shouldn't exist. The sky was gray, the clouds heavy. The forest outside was as silent as the first time. But now, he understood the silence. The earth was in mourning, or in reverence. He stumbled through the woods for hours until he found the abandoned campsite. Equipment lay scattered. The tents were torn. Everything suggested panic, haste, or complete abandonment. Noah knelt by the main radio. No power. But it didn't matter. He knew what he had to do. Noah spent the night at the camp, alone, by the edge of a fire he barely had the strength to light. The cold was biting, but not more than what he felt inside. His face was covered in dried blood, his throat raw from breathing dust and fear. His eyes wouldn't close, not from lack of sleep, but because every time he blinked, he saw Lena dying in front of him. He saw Samir, Desmond, Collins, Ferris, all the faces that had gone down with him into that cave and would never return. The night passed like a delirium. When the sun finally tore through the clouds and lit the wet clearings of Missoula, Noah stood with difficulty. His steps were shaky, but determined. He had to leave. He had to reach someone, civilization, the police, a reporter, anyone, and he had to tell the truth. For 2 days, he walked through the forest, following faint trails, traces he remembered from the entry path. He survived on camp leftovers, rainwater, and the obsession to stay alive. And he did. He was found by a group of hunters 30 kilometers from the cave entrance, dehydrated, hallucinating, scratched all over, and with a look none of them would ever forget. When asked what happened, he gave the answer he would repeat for the rest of his life. We messed with something we shouldn't have. Taken to the hospital, Noah spent days under psychiatric observation. They tried to treat him like just another case of mental collapse under stress. A post-traumatic breakdown. But when authorities went to investigate the cave's location, they found the place sealed. As if it had never been opened. As if the very earth had decided to hide what lay within. Noah didn't give up. Over the following months, he wrote everything, every detail, sketches of the inscriptions, names of the dead, maps of the cave based on memory. He left copies in strategic places with trusted people and recorded a full testimony. Not for fame, not for revenge, but so that no one would ever go back to that place. So the warning would be understood. On the last page of his report, Noah wrote with a trembling hand, "If you find the entranceway, do not go in. That which lives down there does not forget, and it let me live, only to remind you of that." Years passed. Noah went on with life, or what was left of it. He moved to another state, avoided mountains, caves, forests. He never again got near anything that resembled damp stone or absolute silence. But the truth never left him. It lived in his nightmares, in the sounds only he heard at night, in the shadows that seemed to follow his steps. In every mirror he saw the creature's eyes. Eyes that didn't hate. They only watched. What he saw in that cave changed something inside him. A kind of crack in the understanding of what is real. He no longer spoke to journalists. He didn't repeat the story to the curious. And if anyone tried to turn him into an urban legend, he went silent. Because he knew it wasn't legend. It was marked territory. It was dominion. The story Noah wrote ended up shelved at a university, deemed the sick fiction of a broken man. But he didn't care. He never wrote to convince. He wrote to warn. And time proved him right. Groups began to disappear in the mountains west of Missoula. Hikers, researchers, adventurers. No bodies found. No signs of struggle. Only destroyed equipment, tents torn open from the inside, and an absence that seemed to weigh on the very air. The authorities blamed bears, harsh temperatures, human error. But Noah knew. He knew. One night he received an anonymous letter. Just one handwritten sentence. "You lived. But silence has an expiration date." No sender. No clue who had written it. And that same night, in the silence of his room, with the door locked and the window shut, Noah woke from a nightmare, only to discover wet footprints on the floor of the hallway. Footprints of a bipedal animal, giant, with claws. And in that moment he understood the final truth. The creature hadn't spared him out of mercy. The werewolf had marked him. And as long as Noah breathed, the story wouldn't be over. Because the warning needed to live on. Because the terror needed to be remembered. And because he, the elder, the eternal hunter, was still there, waiting for the next one. With patience, with hunger, and with eyes that never sleep. Noah's descent into the forbidden caves of Missoula stands as a haunting testimony, not just of survival, but of a truth the world was never meant to know. The ancient ones are awakening, and what waits beneath the earth may not stay buried for long. Like this video if you felt the dread crawling through those dark corridors. Tell us in the comments which moment chilled you the most, and share this with someone who still believes that science can explain everything. Finally, if you value your safety, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and ring the bell before the next seal is broken.